Welcome everyone to This Explainer. Whenever we hear the epic roar of the Mahabharata, our minds almost instantly go straight to the Great War, right? We picture the clashing chariots, the massive armies, and that ultimate triumph of righteousness. But today, we're going to explore a chapter that honestly doesn't get talked about nearly enough. We are diving into the epic's most emotional, profound, and untold final chapter, the Mahaprasthana, the Great Departure, and the very final journey of the Pandavas. Okay, let's dive right into this, because what is absolutely fascinating is that the story didn't actually end with that famous victory at Kurukshetra. We so often think that winning the war was the grand finale, but it turns out that victory, it was really just setting the stage for their ultimate spiritual test. So what actually happened to these mighty heroes when the fighting finally stopped and the years just started rolling on?
Let's get into Section 1, the ultimate departure.
So to really understand this departure, we have to look at a world that had deeply changed. The war had established righteousness, for sure, but it had also wiped out countless families and left these deep, invisible wounds on the victors. The heroes were just exhausted. Exactly 36 years had passed since the Great War, and a whole new generation had grown up. But then, the ultimate turning point hit. Lord Krishna, their guide, their friend, literally the very soul of the Pandavas, departed from the mortal world. Following a curse, his entire lineage was destroyed, and his legendary city of Dwarka sank completely into the ocean. For Yudhishthira and his brothers, the world suddenly felt entirely hollow. It felt lifeless and meaningless without Krishna. And they knew, right in that moment, it was time to leave.
Which brings us to Section 2, Surrendering the Past.
See, they didn't just cling to their power or their massive kingdom. In a perfectly calm, composed way, Yudhishthira gathered his family, and they made this unspoken decision to just surrender their past. And their process of letting go was absolute. First, they crowned Abhimanyu's young son, Parikshit, as the new king of Hastinapur. Second, they systematically stripped off all their royal jeweled robes and dressed in these simple garments made of tree bark, basically taking up the lives of wandering ascetics. And third, they just started walking north. But honestly, the most fascinating detail is this. As they left, this mysterious, completely ordinary-looking stray dog silently fell into step behind them, following them with just unwavering loyalty.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of what they were giving up. Their journey took them first to the shores of the Western Ocean. Suddenly, Agni, the god of fire, appeared right out of the waters. He demanded that Arjuna surrender his legendary bow, the Gandiva, explaining that its earthly purpose was completely finished. Now, Arjuna is the greatest warrior of the age, but he just closed his eyes, found this deep peace, and threw his ultimate weapon, his very identity really, into the sea. He left his past entirely behind.
Moving on to Section 3, the fall of the mighty.
Let's see how this builds, because the pacing of their journey changes drastically right about here. They turned their backs on the sea and began this grueling, freezing ascent up the Himalayas. And this was no ordinary mountain climb. This was literally the path to heaven. A realm where the icy winds just slice right through you, and where only the purest, most unburdened souls can even survive. But as the air thinned and the snow got deeper, a staggering tragedy unfolded. First, Draupadi stumbled and fell. Then Sahadeva. Then Nakula. Then the great Arjuna. And finally, the incredibly strong Bhima. One by one, the absolute mightiest figures of the age collapsed into the snow and passed away. And through it all, Yudhishthira didn't look back once. He walked on, completely alone, accompanied only by that mysterious stray dog.
So why did they fall? Well, Yudhishthira understood the harsh, inescapable law of karma. When Bhima had asked why Draupadi fell first, Yudhishthira explained it. It wasn't because she lacked virtue at all. As the quote shows, she held a very subtle worldly partiality for Arjuna over her other husbands. In this ultimate quest for absolute spiritual liberation, even that tiny anchor of earthly attachment was enough to weigh her soul down in the snow.
And Arjuna? How does the invincible warrior fall? Yudhishthira noted that Arjuna carried the incredibly heavy spiritual burden of his own arrogance. He was intensely proud of his martial skills, and he carried the weight of this unfulfilled vow to wipe out all his enemies in a single day. That immense pride, no matter how amazing his deeds actually were, became an unbearable weight on the mountain of heaven.
Section 4, the test of Dharma.
This brings us right to the summit, and honestly, one of the most powerful moments in the entire epic. Yudhishthira finally reaches the peak. He's freezing, he's exhausted, and he is standing utterly alone, except for that stray dog. Suddenly, the sky erupts in this blinding light, like 1,000 suns. Lord Indra, the king of the gods, descends from the clouds in this dazzling, jewel-encrusted golden chariot, ready to welcome Yudhishthira straight into paradise in his mortal body. But there's a massive catch. Indra lays down a strict, unyielding condition. Yudhishthira is completely welcome to step into the chariot, but the dog absolutely cannot come. Indra argues that a mere stray dog would defile the absolute purity of heaven. So, we reach this ultimate crossroads. Will the weary king choose the eternal paradise he has worked so hard to earn, or will he stand by a stray dog?
Yudhishthira's response here is nothing short of legendary. He firmly and absolutely rejects heaven. He looks right at the king of the gods and declares that abandoning a dependent who has sought his refuge just to secure his own personal joy is a massive sin. For Yudhishthira, a religion or a sense of righteousness that abandons the weak in exchange for a cosmic reward is just completely hollow.
And the exact moment he refuses that chariot, an incredible twist occurs. That ordinary stray dog begins to glow with this divine golden light and entirely transforms. It was Yama, the god of Dharma and justice, who, by the way, was also Yudhishthira's own spiritual father. He had disguised himself specifically to test Yudhishthira's ultimate righteousness. By choosing duty over paradise, Yudhishthira passed the ultimate test flawlessly.
This takes us to Section 5, the final illusion. Now, what's really interesting about this is you'd think he boards the chariot with Indra and Yama, flies off to heaven, and it's a happy ending, right? Not quite. Reaching heaven in his mortal body wasn't the end of his trials. When Yudhishthira walks into that dazzling light, he encounters an absolutely jarring contrast. Who does he see sitting in honor on a golden throne? His evil cousin Duryodhana, the literal architect of all their suffering. Enraged, Yudhishthira demands to see his beloved brothers and Draupadi. So a divine messenger leads him away from the light all the way down into a stinking, dark, agonizing hell, where he actually hears the voices of his family crying out in endless pain.
Yudhishthira is totally horrified. His heart is tearing apart. The messenger tells him he can return to heaven, but Yudhishthira stops, and he delivers the emotional climax of his entire life's journey. He declares, "If my presence brings them peace, I will stay here in hell." He actively chooses to suffer in the darkness out of pure love and duty. And the very instant he makes that choice, the darkness shatters, the stench fades away, the gods appear smiling. It was all a grand illusion. It was a final karmic test designed specifically to burn away the very last remnants of his earthly grudges and attachments. Indra explains that every soul has to experience a glimpse of hell for their earthly sins, however small they might be. Yudhishthira is then led to bathe in the celestial Mandakini River, and as he dips into that divine water, his mortal body, along with all of its exhaustion and sorrow, just washes away. He emerges in a radiant divine form and is finally joyously reunited with his family in perfect eternal peace.
Section 6, Timeless Lessons of Dharma.
Before we wrap this explainer up, let's distill the core philosophy of this epic journey. You know, these mighty heroes didn't fall in the mountain because they were evil. They fell because of incredibly relatable human flaws. Draupadi's partiality, Sahadeva's intellectual pride, Nakula's vanity over his looks, Arjuna's arrogance regarding his skills, Bhima's gluttony and physical pride. These are the exact same psychological burdens and ego traps that we all carry around with us today.
So the crucial point is really this: Dharma, or righteousness, is not a transaction. We don't do what is right just because we want some VIP ticket to heaven, or because we expect a reward for it. We do what is right simply because it is right. Yudhishthira proved that true virtue stands firm, even if it means choosing a stray dog over a golden chariot, or choosing to suffer in hell over a throne in heaven.
Which brings us directly back to you. As we look at this final question, I want you to really think about it. Which of these ancient flaws are you carrying on your own journey? Are you weighed down by vanity, intellectual pride, or worldly attachments? It's a heavy thought for sure, but realizing those burdens and learning to finally let them go, well, that might just be your own path to true freedom and peace. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible exploration of the Mahaprasthana. See you next time.